All right, our next item for board discussion is 5-year forecast. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Ms. Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Good evening, our board members. I have for you an update for our 5-year forecast. As you well know, we give this presentation twice a year, usually in November and May. So tonight I am presenting to you the update since November, which I'm sure many of you know has many things have changed. So I hope to explain those to you tonight and answer any questions that you may have. So again, our purpose for providing this information is regarding our long-range planning of our financial outlook and meeting the school district's ability to sign the certificate, what they call the 412 for certificate. And it also provides a method for the Department of Education and the Auditor of State to identify school districts with potential financial problems. I first start with sharing some information about our revenue, and many of you have seen this before. Not much changes. We continue to rely on our local real estate dollars as our largest source of revenue for the district. This has increased slightly this year, while the yellow portion of our total revenue has slightly decreased. And we'll go into more detail again in just a few minutes, but I did want to point out to the board the CARES Act funding that you have heard about recently. That money is to be set aside in a separate fund, much like the student wellness and success dollars. So the total amount that the district is going to receive is supposed to be $1,152,000. Again, that money is not in our revenue stream because it's placed aside in a separate fund. But eventually when we get to the expenditure breakdown, I will share with you how we plan to spend that money. So getting into the details of our revenue, our general property tax, again, we've seen a slight increase this year in collections, about 2%. But unfortunately, with the COVID-19 pandemic, we anticipate many people possibly not being able to pay their taxes, which results in what we are projecting to believe about a 6.32% reduction in collections for next year. Our public utility personal property tax line item is one piece of our revenue that continues to grow slightly each year, and we are anticipating that to be almost a 4% growth over the life of the forecast. Unfortunately, it is just a small portion of our revenue, but it is a positive one for us. The next line item is our state funding, and latest results of that reduction, I think everybody has been hearing about, for our district involved a $1.6 million reduction that started actually this month, and it'll cover next month. It's being deducted from our state funding for May and June. So the 1.6 million reduction to our district really equates to a 5% decrease in aid from the state. With more rumors circulating, but not any official numbers yet, we are projecting that we will receive an additional 10% reduction for next year. And then I'm projecting that we have flat funding the following year. So what I'm looking at is a 10% reduction next year, and then maintaining that 10%, not receiving any increase. And then the following year, hopefully, the state will be back with a 5% increase to our funding. And then again, I'm leaving it with flat funding for the 2024 fiscal year. Very hard to predict right now because we don't know what our cuts may be. But again, we'll review this again in November, and I know by then we will have more information and have a much better picture. But that's what we're projecting as of now. The property tax allocation line item is for state reimbursements for the homestead and rollback taxes. We are projecting those to really remain pretty flat through the forecast period. Unfortunately, we had a slight decline this year of about $216,000 in that revenue piece. Under all other operating revenues and other sources, we are projecting a slight increase for this year. Our open enrollment numbers tend to remain pretty steady. We're down a little bit this year. We're expected to generate, as you see, 1.575 million, but don't forget we have children that leave our district. That'll be showing up in our expenditure items pretty soon. So we don't actually gain all that money, but we'll get to that in a few minutes so I can give you the actual amount. Casino revenue is another interesting variable for us. As you know, casinos have been shut down for a few months, but the revenues actually that we have received this year already increased slightly up about $16,000. Where we'll see the decline will be in the next probably 2 years with the casinos being shut down and things, gearing back up. So we are projecting a 30% decline for fiscal year 21 and 22. So overall, we are projecting just a slight decrease, just a little less than 1% for this year's revenue picture. Moving on to expenditures. These, percentages remain pretty constant. Again, because the majority of our business is personnel, between salaries and benefits, that equates to about 76% of our budget. Not surprising, but it is difficult when we look to make some reductions at times. There's not much that we can do beyond that, with like in purchase services or capital outlay. It's very difficult. When you're looking at some cuts to really make a huge impact with those smaller pieces. Salaries, of course, is our largest point of expenditure. Our Classroom Teachers Association in the district did finalize a settlement agreement with, and I know Mr. Martin has covered this in a past meeting, but the 2.5% base increases for the next 3 years are included. Step adjustments for steps above step 12, and also an additional step at the top of the salary schedule. Those have all been included in the forecast. We actually started negotiations yesterday with our OPSI unions. We are projecting 2.25% salary increases for those support staff members. Reviewing what positions we've added for this year, those are listed. And then moving on to next year, we again are expanding our Fairfield Academy program. So we are adding 2 teachers there, our speech pathologists that we need. The instructional specialists are going to be helping with that one-to-one program with our computers with our students. The 3 elementary counselors that we're adding, those again are partially funded by the Student Wellness and Success dollars. We are adding a preschool intervention teacher and then 3 additional educational assistants for special education and preschool. We are doing a couple of reductions. 2 teachers are being reduced because enrollment numbers are not showing that we need those teachers. And Mr. Martin has shared with me that we are continually looking at our enrollment numbers, and as enrollment changes, we may have other reductions possibly depending on what the numbers are showing. So for this coming year, we are reducing 2 teachers. And we also are not replacing Shannon Williamson, who we just mentioned resigned as our preschool supervisor. She was a half-time supervisor. We are taking those duties. Some of the individuals in the special ed department are taking some of her duties, and then we are also contracting with the Educational Service Center to pick up some duties, and that'll be shown later in our purchase services line. Our retirement and insurance benefits continue to be fairly consistent. We've had, again, excellent results from being a part of the Optimal Health Initiative. We realized just a 2% increase in our medical insurance only this year, which is phenomenal. We are projecting about a 5% increase for next year, and then 7% increases possibly for fiscal years 22 through 24. We continue to rely on our employees to go to their wellness visits and their screenings and get their flu shots, and I really believe that has helped keep our premiums down, because they are trying to take care of themselves much more nowadays. We also have a great lost my train of thought. Oh, I'm sorry. They also pay 20% of the medical premium right now, and they pay 10% of the dental premium. Purchase services for this year, some of the big ticket items that we've had. I know Mr. Penny's mentioned our paving plan. We still have a bus lease and HVAC lease that we pay. 2 school resource officers that we added this year, partnering with the city. Those are partially funded by the student wellness dollars. Additional special ed services, and also we've had some elevator repairs, and our new Final Form software that has come in to great use during this shutdown has been a real great addition for us. Next year, the paving plan continues with including the paving of the new storage building area. We're replacing an antiquated phone system, preschool services that I mentioned just a little while ago. That's going to cost $22,200 to contract with the Butler County ESC to help us with that. Continuing our bus lease and our HVAC lease payments. And then the next line item, Ed Choice Scholarships, we spent a lot of time on that in November, and I just wanted to update the board on where things stand. So we have basically been given a hold harmless for this coming year. So the legislation's been put on hold. We anticipate things are going to come back up and change, hopefully for the better for our district after legislature gets back to work. But as things stand right now, I left in some monies, because if they don't change, we need to be prepared for that. So I went through and revised our original numbers based on information we have now as to who may participate, those private schools that may participate in the Ed Choice scholarships. These are the updated numbers for fiscal year 22, fiscal year 23, and fiscal year 24. For supplies and materials, we continue to support our curriculum department with many of our advanced placement exams, technology or curriculum software, College Credit Plus items, testing materials. That continues. The newest item that was added is the last one regarding laptop covers. So our student machines, our one-to-ones, we want to try and protect those, and as long as we can, we've added $75,000 to purchase covers for those. For next year, continuing mainly with most of those same items, and also additional laptop covers for the next purchase that we will make. Our capital outlay for this year, this is really just a review of what we have done or in the process of doing. Again, in the process of making our first purchase of our technology one-to-one plan, and the new phone system hardware we are purchasing for $86,425, along with the academy expansion and our storage building. All those are taking place right now. For next year, as you know, Mr. Penny's presented the maintenance facilities plan. We have gone back to that plan and tried to identify the most critical items that we felt needed to be addressed. Mr. Smith, Mr. Penny, and I have come up with these items listed. And outside of, let's talk about the buses and technology in a minute, but the fume hoods, the roof, the HVAC items, everything down on that list are the priorities we feel that need to be addressed for next year. Back up to the top with technology. That money for next year is going to be paid for, is going to be used by the CARES Act funding that we're going to receive. One of the allowable uses of that funding is student technology, teacher machine student technology. So that is what we are going to use the money for. So it replaces the general fund money that we would have used to make this purchase. We have decided to reduce our busing purchases from 5 per year to 2 per year in order to try to reduce some of the expenditures. So that's a savings of $300,000. And those priorities that have been set for the maintenance plan, we have put those priorities in place for the following years, but we know that may change based on things that may need to be addressed sooner rather than later. So I have included that in future years of the forecast. Our last item under expenditure details results in other expenditures such as banking fees, treasurer fees. This is where the open enrollment that gets sent out to other districts falls. And as you can see, the net gain from what comes in and what goes out is about $310,000. So overall, we're projecting our total expenditure increase for this year to be 4.83%. This is our graph of revenues, expenditures, and our cash balance. And as you can see, it's not a very favorable picture regarding cash balance. And to get to the actual numbers, based on the current projection, we will start deficit spending this year. And as you see, like I said, it's not favorable for the future, but we know that there's many variables right now. So things can change, but as it looks, we're trending toward needing additional revenue growth by 2022. Mr. Birding, that concludes my presentation. I'll be glad to answer any questions from the board.
Other questions from the board? Comments?
Yes, I have a question. Great job, Nancy. Thank you. It's very thorough. I do have a question about the Ed Choice scholarships held harmless for fiscal year 21. So I'm assuming that the numbers that you have for 2022 are in case there's no further legislation that rolls that list of 1,200 students back, or 1,200 schools back, because I was under the impression that if they proceeded with what they already have, what's already been out there with Senate Bill 90, that we would not get those impacts for 2022 and 2023. So I was surprised to see those numbers. Can you give a little bit more information on that? And does that include the 9th grade scholarships? Because I thought those were also eliminated for 2022 and such. What are the details?
So here's an explanation. What I try to do is take what's in law right now and apply it to us without anything changing. And so what's in law right now is that this would be our impact if nothing changes. Because they couldn't come to a conclusion before we shut down. So it may not be as easy as we think. I'm not saying that it's not going to happen. I hope it does. I hope things do change, believe me. But I like to give you a realistic picture. If it doesn't change, this is the impact for us. And we may not know that by November when I do the next presentation. And Billy, I'll let you chime. I'm sorry, I'll let you chime in.
No, you're fine. So, just to refresh everyone's memory, it's been a long time, or it feels like it's been a couple years, but it hasn't. It only goes back to November. But, kind of where we were before, COVID-19 shut everything down, we had a positive feeling. We didn't have any guarantee, but we were feeling upbeat as a district in terms of the impact that Ed Choice would have on us. But it wasn't official because what we thought they were going to do never happened because they just decided to put it on a freeze. What we were hearing before everything shut down, based on what we were hearing, we believed that our district would not have any schools on the list. But they didn't finalize it. They didn't make anything official. All of that was unofficial and kind of what we were hearing, that we would not be affected as a district and would not have schools on the list. But everything came to a freeze. And so those numbers that you are seeing is if things, went backwards and we did not get the anticipated outcome that we thought we were going to get back in March. And Nancy does a great job of always just, trying to make sure that we don't get any surprises, on a forecast. So since that is a possibility that, after we come off of this 1 year being held harmless, we just don't know with 100% certainty what will happen. If it goes back to where we thought they were, then I think we have a pretty good chance of not being impacted, but it's not a guarantee. So I hope that makes sense.
It does. I just thought that Governor DeWine had signed off and basically mandated that it had to be frozen unless there was an extra push to go back and get the original list. So I was surprised to see those accounted for because I actually did think that he had provided some protection in the latest signing, which occurred after the shutdown, I believe.
Yeah, that's something, we certainly could look into, but it was our understanding, and I think others as well, that it was placed on hold. It was frozen where it was, and then we would come back to it and revisit it at a later date. Again, we felt good about where we thought we were headed, but no guarantees.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'm glad those numbers are in there because until it's law, we have to account for the loss of that revenue. So I'm glad that it's in there so that we're not surprised if it comes back and we are hit with those deductions. So any other questions or comments?
I have a question. So it looks like, according to Nancy, in 2022, we need some sort of additional funding. And what does that mean? Can you explain what that means, or what that, obviously that doesn't happen right at 2022. What happens before that, or what's kind of the planning? What's your thoughts?
So I'll explain it to you this way. If nothing changes, at the end, the ending balance in fiscal year 23 is about $9 million.
Mm-hmm.
And $9 million gets us through, basically we spend $9 million a month in expenditures. So we need to start having discussions earlier to address
right
where we're headed. Basically, there's two things we can do. We can reduce expenditures, or we can, pass a levy.
And when, timing wise, when do we need to start talking about that now? I mean, that doesn't seem very far away for me. So when do we need to start talking about that?
Depending on what the forecast is showing us next year, I would say by 21, end of 21, we need to probably have a plan as to where we're going. Because hopefully, it would really be nice to have a state budget that we know what to anticipate is going to be coming, whether it's an increase or a decrease or nothing at all. A new biannual budget will be coming out next year. Hopefully we'll know, again, that will provide us more information for those following years. So we should be able to make hopefully some decisions one way or the other.
Okay.
And I see where that's a little bit of both, cutting expenditures and increasing revenue. As Mrs. Lane pointed out before, they decided to only go with 2 new buses this year instead of 5. And so that's saving us $300,000. So, I mean, that's just a small little bit, but again, it's a step in the right direction that, Mrs. Lane and Mr. Smith and the leadership team do look at ways to save the district money. It's not just a money tree that they go back and shake. So I applaud them for doing that. They see that there's going to be a slight decrease this year, and they figured out, well, where can we trim some of that? And so thank you very much for doing that.
We are, one of the things, I probably didn't mention this, we are not adding any additional positions after 2021. There are no additional positions in the forecast.
Also, Miss Lane, you spoke to it, but it's just so difficult to grasp what the state's doing, and what we had built in there in prior forecast, I think in the next couple of years was maybe a 2 or 3% growth in revenue, and that obviously has now changed completely. And then the money that they're taking back, they're taking it back immediately. It's not a projection. They're saying is it almost we have to give it back, or are we just not getting it for May and June?
Tomorrow will be our first reduction in a payment. Yes. So they have taken the money away from us in their normal, they pay us twice a month from the state. And tomorrow's payment is quite small compared to what it normally is. So yes, they're taking it. It'll be tomorrow, and then the 2 times they pay us in June, they're going to reduce those payments. And then, like I said, I don't have any idea what's going to happen starting in July.
There's certainly no accounting for any of that, right?
Right. We're, this year we have frozen the building and department budgets. People are not spending money unnecessarily. We have frozen. We should have some funds left from this year. Possibly we're asking that they only spend it if it's essential. Again, we're trying to cut here in little ways to try and save some money.
And I'd like to just give one more example. Nancy and I met with Joe, and in addition to those, reducing the number of bus purchases and some other things that have already been mentioned, initially we had some conversations with the board about, our maintenance plan. And, we've been working on narrowing that list for quite some time. And at some point we said, well, we will prioritize, and then whatever, we anticipated that the cost of those jobs would come in lower than what we were projecting. Mm-hmm. And we said that we would take those funds and just continue to go down that list and complete some of the other items listed. Since the announcement of the 1.6 million in cuts and anticipating future cuts, instead, we are now saying we prioritize, this is our list. If we save money, if those numbers come in lower, we will not continue to go down that list. We're just going to hold off on that and just really focus on warm, safe, and dry. So again, I just want to share that example. I appreciate Michael's comment. We do take this, very seriously. We want our community to know that, we work hard to be fiscally responsible, and every dollar matters. And we've spent hours already just brainstorming and identifying some ways that we can save the district and our taxpayers' money. So just wanted to give that additional example.
Are there any other questions or comments from the board?
I do have a comment. It's about some of our tax incremental funding. I guess I I didn't see exactly where it's in here, but do we know or have it quantified somewhere in here as to the impact of those sort of TIF districts? I think Bridgewater is covered in one, some of the places out here in the township. But do we have any idea if we're anticipating drastic reductions in our TIF district funding?
That's included in the forecast. I did not put that in our presentation tonight, but I can get you those numbers easily, Belina and the board. I do not believe that I decreased those collections because they've been steadily increasing. I think I may have held them flat, to be honest with you. I'm not anticipating any more growth.
But what about reductions? I mean, that's the thing I'm worried about there. Do you think it might be dramatic, or?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
Time will tell.
Yeah. Yep. That's true. Okay.
Good question.
Thanks.
Mrs. Lane, thank you so very much. If there's no other questions, I really appreciate when looking at the actual forecast that you provide to us. I appreciate all the notes that you put below the data. It really helps you understand how you come up with those numbers. And a layperson can look at these and understand it. So I appreciate all that information. I know it's not, again, like Mr. Harry used to say, it's not your forecast. It's your interpretation of the forecast. So thank you for that. And of course, one of the things they teach you when you go to board member training is that year 5 should never happen, because it's a warning or a symbol of what could happen if you don't make appropriate steps to prevent that from happening. So I know that we've got great leadership with Mrs. Lane and Mr. Smith, and that we have a really tremendous board that looks over the money and makes sure that we don't get to the negative bank account balance in the year 2024. So again, thank you very much, and we will make sure that we address this in the year 2020, 2021, 2022, so that 23 and 24 don't happen the way that it's projected. So again, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks.
Okay, Mr. Smith.